It was a good day when a black man thought of eating good, so he went to the most famous restaurant in the city. He walked in like any customer. No fanfare, no entourage, just a man in plain clothes with a steady pace and a plan to enjoy a quiet lunch. The host glanced up, skimmed the reservation list, and before a word was spoken, a security guard stepped forward with the kind of look that scans for trouble. "Sir, do you have a reservation?" the guard asked, voice clipped. The black man smiled politely. "No, Sebastian. I just want a table for one." The guard's eyes flicked over him, and then he said, "We're full, sir. You need to wait outside." The black man raised his hands in a calm, neutral gesture. "I'll wait, no problem." A staff member nearby who wore a bright smile, but a colder tone, leaned close to the guard and said under his breath, "Probably one of those tourists looking for a quick bite." The black man heard it. He didn't react. He stood at the entrance, relaxed, waiting like a man who expected nothing and deserved everything. Minutes stretched. A table freed up and the maitre d' announced it, but the guard stepped between the table and the black man as if a physical barrier could make the judgment permanent. "Sir, you can't be seated. We have a private event," he said, nodding toward a cluster of well-dressed guests. A staffer crossed her arms and added, "We don't serve walk-ins during private events." The black man looked at both of them and said, "I understand. I'll wait." He moved his weight from one foot to the other and pulled out his phone, but he didn't browse. He watched people pass and the color in the room, as if cataloging the scene in quiet detail. An argument started when a customer with a reservation pointed to the black man and asked what he was doing there. The staff repeated their lines. Voices rose. A well-dressed woman snapped her fingers and demanded the manager. The manager was a white man known for being friendly with the city's elite. He hurried over with a practiced smile that rarely faltered. The black man greeted him politely. "Hello." The manager barely looked at him, eyes shifting to the guard, eyes searching for confirmation that a policy had been enforced. "We have a private function," the manager said before asking the black man a single question. "Do you have a reservation?" The black man replied calmly, "No, I don't." The manager's smile stiffened. "I'm sorry, we can't seat you. Shame is quiet when it arrives in public." The black man looked at the people who had been turned away and then back at the manager and said, "I don't want to cause trouble. I'd like a table for one." The manager shrugged. "We're full." The black man's expression didn't fold. He waited, patient. Then the guard decided to escalate to humiliation. "Sir, we've had issues with people pretending to be clients to get service," he said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. The black man's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice even. "I'm not pretending. I'll wait." The guard said, "If you don't step outside, I'll need to call the cops." The staffer smirked. The manager, uncomfortable now, backed a bit and watched as the guard reached for his radio. When the guard called the police, the black man stayed calm. He folded his hands, took a breath, and settled into the embarrassment like a man who'd been taught to hold dignity under pressure. The arrival of the police car changed the shape of the room. Guests looked up, eyes wide, as if they were watching a scene in someone else's life. The two officers stepped out, professional, scanning the scene with quick assessments. The guard painted a story, blanket, unasked-for narrative, about a suspicious man refusing to leave. He said it loud enough that the officers turned toward the black man with brows raised. The black man spoke up, not with anger, but with a steady voice. "I came here to eat. I did not want trouble." One officer asked the CID. He handed it over. The name on the card showed his identity, ordinary letters that meant something different now when read against assumptions. The officer's expressions shifted from procedural caution to a pause of recognition. One of them exhaled, low and surprised. He looked at the black man again and said, "Do you own this place?" The question landed like a pebble in a still pond. The black man nodded. "Yes, I own this restaurant," he said quietly. A ripple went through the room like a low wave. The guard's mouth opened then closed. The staff member's smirk froze, then faltered. Guests mouthed apologies, and some turned their heads away, embarrassed at having watched. The officer's posture changed from authority to awkward realization. A different tone took over the room, a hard, embarrassed silence that buzzed with sudden comprehension. The black man they'd seen as a problem was the very person who employed many of them, paid the salary lines that kept their lives intact, and ran the business that held this entire evening together. The guard stuttered. We thought. The staffer tried to adjust her smile into a professional apology, but it came out thin. One officer's jaw tightened. In a clean, crisp motion that punished the mistake with procedure, the officer stepped forward and began to place the guard and the staffer under temporary restraint for false accusation and harassment, actions that, under law, warranted investigation if a complaint was filed. The guard's face went white. The staffer's hand flew to her mouth. Before cuffs could be tightened, the black man lifted his hand and stopped the scene. He met the guard's eyes, the staffer's eyes, the officer's eyes, and he said, "Stop. Don't arrest them." The words were measured, heavy, a decision landing in the center of the room. The officers paused. The black man continued, "They mistook me. They were wrong. They need to learn. Locking them up won't teach them what they need to know." The officers shifted uneasily. One of them glanced at his partner and then at the manager, who had rushed forward when he heard the commotion. The manager was breathing fast, his face flushed with the adrenaline of confrontation. He looked terrified now, seeing the consequence of the snap judgments he had allowed. The black man's voice was clear. "Give them a chance to make it right. Retrain them. Apologize. Let them understand what they did." The manager stepped in, voice trembling. I didn't know. I trusted them." The black man nodded. "I know, but trust is earned. I'm asking you to make them earn it back. Let the law go on this one. Make them face the community, not the cell." The officers, professional and changing from enforcement to mediation, exchanged looks and then lowered their hands. "Sir, we have to follow the law," one said. "You're asking us to desist." The black man said, "Yes, I'm asking you to desist. I'll file a formal complaint and handle it through training and oversight. That will make it stick." The manager's shoulders sagged. He was 30-something, groomed and used to directing staff with a nod. He stepped forward, voice small in front of the room. "I will handle this. I will apologize. I will change our hiring and training. I will not let this happen again." The staffer, shaken, stammered, "I'm so sorry." The black man looked at her, at the guard, and at the manager. He could have demanded apologies with teeth. He could have been cruel and correct. Instead, he took another path. "You hurt me," he said, voice steady. "But more than that, you hurt the people who work here and the customers who trust us. Your mistake is not just your own. We will repair it together." He turned to the officers. "Thank you for being careful. I appreciate how you came. But I've chosen a different kind of justice today." The officers nodded, still surprised, smoothing their uniforms as if physical order might make emotional order easier to find. Once the immediate crisis cooled, the manager asked for a private word. He led the black man to the back office, away from ears and eyes. "I'm sorry," he said, unsteady. "I should have stepped in sooner. I relied on shortcuts and faces. I hired people who looked like our usual client, and I let that bias steer my judgment. I'm terrified I'll lose my job over this. I'm terrified I'll lose the trust of patrons. I don't know how to fix it." The black man watched him without lecturing. "Fixing it starts with ownership," he answered. "Admit it publicly. Retrain your team. Change your recruitment. Bring in people who know how to serve everyone, not people who match an image. And if you want to keep your job, then do the work." The manager swallowed hard. "I will. I'll start today." Word spread quickly through the dining room. The guests who had watched with curious eyes now listened as the manager made a quiet announcement. The restaurant would hold a meeting, review hiring practices, and institute sensitivity and service training. The staff would apologize, not as a scripted line, but in a forum where the black man would speak if he wanted. The staff members' faces were pale, suddenly aware that a reckoning could be constructive rather than punitive. The guard, who had bristled with bravado an hour earlier, now stood small and contrite. The staffer, who had been laughing behind the veil of her shift, now looked broken with shame. Outside, the black man, age 45, walked a slow-circled path around the building, phone in hand, aware of how easily respect could be stripped and how quickly it could be restored by choices. He had stories of hiring, of building, of listening, but he wanted this one to be simple. People make mistakes, systems permit mistakes, and leaders must correct them. He stepped inside and sat at a table, asking only for coffee. Regulars brought him nods and new respect. Staff members came by to offer water, to apologize again with tears, to ask how they could help rebuild trust. He listened to them, answered blunt questions, and told them what he expected: honesty, humility, and a willingness to be retrained. The manager came to him later with a folder and a plan. "We're changing our process," he said. "Listing, testing, community outreach. I want to hire a consultant and create scholarships for underrepresented candidates. I will run this as part of my job review." The black man's eyes softened. "Talk is cheap," he said. "Actions are not. Put in writing. Publicize it. Let the city see that you are changing how hiring works here." The manager agreed, head bowed. Weeks later, the restaurant rolled out a public apology campaign, not as a PR stunt, but as a community program. Staff were retrained. The guard took classes on implicit bias. The manager reported to the owner monthly with updates. Customers were invited to community dinners that mixed price points. The black man attended some of the sessions and spoke openly about what it felt like to be judged. He did not play the wrong martyr. He told stories of industry, of people who needed chances, of how dignity repaired more than it punished. People listened. At the next staff meeting, the guard, voice trembling, said, "I judged you wrong. I am sorry." The staffer who'd laughed earlier said the same, hands clenched. The manager presented metrics and a public promise. The black man stood and said, "You are all put here to serve a city, not an image. You can let this moment teach you, or you can let it scar the way you treat strangers. I forgive you, not because you deserved it automatically, but because I want you to show me the proof of your change." The room exhaled like a held breath released. Months later, the restaurant's ratings rose, not because of spin, but because people saw consistent, genuine change. The staff who had once sneered now took pride in inclusive service. The manager learned to interview for empathy as much as skill. The guard, who had once assumed threat from a man's skin, became an advocate for fairness on the floor, quick to step in for customers who were denied elsewhere. The city noticed, and other venues began to adapt similar training. The last scene came on a warm evening when the black man, 45, dined quietly, and a table of strangers asked for his help with a young staffer nervous about promotion. He called the manager over, smiled, and said, "She's ready. Give her the chance." The manager did, without hesitation, and the black man, looking around at a room that had once judged him and then learned to see, thought about how small acts of courage and mercy can rewire culture. He had been humiliated, yes, but he had chosen a lesson over a punishment, and the city and the restaurant would be better for it. The end came not with headlines, but with steady, quiet work, apologies given, promises kept, and a business that finally reflected the people it served.